If you've been around here for any length of time, you've heard me say probably more than a handful of times, you don't need alcohol, but you do need something. And often I think that something is nervous system regulation. So today we are going deep on that. And to do that, I brought back a guest who was with us a couple of years ago, way back in episode 89. Her name is Brigid Tebaldi. Brigid Tebaldi is a wife, mother of five, a homeschooling mom, and a board certified health coach. She specializes in what she calls spiritual somatic rewiring. It's a framework that combines nervous system repair with the truth of sacred scripture to create a permanent root level transformation. She works with entrepreneurial moms who are still doing everything right and still feeling like the next level is just out of reach. Through her rewired and wealthy framework, she helps women trace those stuck patterns back to where they started and rewire them where they actually live in the body, the spirit, and the nervous system. Brigid, welcome back. I'm so glad to have you here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah. So, can you just tell us a little bit about your journey and what led you to become a nervous system coach specifically for Christian women?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So first off, I do want to preface this with I'm a mom of many kids. Many kids. We have 5 under 9 and under, so there's a lot going on. And then I also run 2 businesses. And we live on a farm. And so I think this has always just for me been something that I've had to do and not even really realized it because otherwise I would literally go crazy. And so this is again just this is how I live now. And what so again, I just wanted to throw that out there because I think that's really important to know, like, that this is a way that you can actually it's a sustainable way that you can actually live. Now let's back up a little bit. I was a horse trainer for a really long time, and if you know anything about horses, you have to be very calm and patient and, like, because they read every single thing that you do. Even if you look at them funny, like, they're gonna pick up on that, so you really have to be keyed into, like, what your body is doing because you're going to directly influence how they behave. And so that was a huge piece of this puzzle for me as well, is that whole regulation in regards to horses. And then I was like, okay, I have a lot of kids. Doing the horse thing is getting rather difficult. So I need to figure out something else. And God led me to online business. And I love birth. Like, I love it so much. And so I got into the online business space years ago, helping women with traumatic birth experiences to really heal from those. And I was walking them through my framework because I went through my own thing and I was able to heal from that. And what I was realizing is that all of these women kept coming in and they were scared of maybe like another hemorrhage or like another C-section or whatever. But at the core of it, none of them felt safe in their own bodies.
Mm.
And so after a little while, it's like, why do they not feel safe in their own bodies? And then like kind of really trying to figure out what's going on there and realized like, oh, and like we talked about it, but I didn't put the right words to it to connect the dots. Where it was like, oh, their nervous systems are shot because they're always in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Mm.
Like always. Not even just in birth, but in life in general. And so that's whenever things started to really kind of shift into this direction of like, I want to get to women before there's this this thing that happens and help them and give them the tools. Not to say that it's going to be perfect all the time, but to give them the tools to walk through it because so much of how birth was mirrors our life, right? And so if we're a people pleaser in life, we're probably going to be a people pleaser in labor, which does not work well, and so on and so on. And so again, it led to this journey and like a lot of discernment and kind of shifting things into really supporting women, especially those like entrepreneurial women who are like building something. I always say building something beautiful for God, like Mother Teresa, and teaching them that their nervous system is their number one asset in life and business. Because if they're feeling stressed and fried and just like so overwhelmed with everything, They're
Mhm.
not going to be able to see the beauty and the joy and like really become that woman that God wants them to be. And so that's where I am now. We're really helping women. Again, a lot of them are entrepreneurs, whether it be like authors, they have their own small businesses, they do it, whatever, and just helping them to become that woman that can hold their family, that and can also hold this big ambition that God has put on their heart.
Mm.
And it's just been such it's been so beautiful.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the work, that you're doing now. I loved the work that you were doing before, and, I think that making that connection is so important, and that's something that I've come across lately too, because women will say, "I can't calm down, I can't shut off my brain, I need to, like, have something that helps me relax in the evening," or maybe their evenings feel boring, whatever it is. And at the heart of it, I really think that it is that nervous system dysregulation from everything that happens during the day, right? And if you are a business owner or you work outside the home, inside the home, have lots of littles, all of those things, you're making a ton of decisions, you're managing emotions and all of those things. So, of course, you're gonna need something, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I had to have you on because I know that you're gonna really, really help my audience and, in addition to all of the women the Lord brings to you to help as well. So for someone who has never heard the term nervous system regulation, which is kind of shocking about not hearing it, because I feel like it's almost like a buzzword now. Like
Absolutely
we're all
exploded.
hearing about it.
Yeah.
But can you explain what that actually means? Just kind of in everyday language, because we might
Yeah.
hear that, but just not really understand what it means too.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So let's kind of go back to when you were in middle school or high school and you probably had to take some biology or anatomy class and you learned about the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. I'm not going to get into like a class here, but just kind of bring yourself back there. And the central nervous system, again, is like the brain and the spinal cord. Peripheral is the peripheral, everything else. And you probably heard some of them say something like, whenever you're chased by a bear or a lion, that kicks on your nervous system so that you can run faster, so that you can get away from that, like the danger. And so that's how a lot of us learned about the nervous system. And then we kind of forgot about it because it's like, we never get chased by lions and bears in this day and age, so hopefully.
Hopefully, yes.
And so it's like just forgotten information because it's not something that we deemed necessary to understand. But what's really important to know is that the nervous system is really just what is scanning the environment. Almost think of it like your subconscious. It's a little more complicated than that, but just think of it like your subconscious, which is always looking around you. It's always listening. It's always trying to take in data and information so that it can best provide protection for you. Because that's ultimately our body's way of staying alive is to stay safe, right? And so the nervous system's main job is to keep you safe. And so, again, most of us are not being chased by wild animals anymore. Thanks be to God. But a lot of us are living in very high stress, complicated environments. And what's interesting is that our nervous systems cannot tell the difference between a lion chasing us and being stuck in traffic or getting that email from maybe a client or like maybe somebody calling you that you really don't want to talk to. And so whenever you can understand it like that, where it's like, okay, it's just trying to keep me safe. Why does my nervous system perceive maybe this call or this email or being stuck in traffic as unsafe? Just like it would perceive if a lion was chasing you, or if you fell out of a tree, or like you had to run to your kid because they fell off the playground or something like that. And so, like, that's sort of the very, very basic of it is again, your nervous system is there to scan the environment, and it does this subconsciously so that it can just keep you safe in whatever environment you are currently in.
So, for a woman who is like, well, I think that probably my nervous system is dysregulated because that's how I feel. Like, I feel like I'm being chased by a bear. When I'm
Yeah,
scrolling Instagram and I see something
yeah,
that, like, it makes me sad or upset, or it is like an email from someone, or, your child is hurt or something happens, what does that feel like where she can say, "Oh, that's what an overloaded nervous system feels like in my body."
Yeah.
And because really it's like the way I explain it to women is like you'll feel like an alarm is going off in your
Hmm.
body.
Yeah.
Um yeah, so how would you explain how it actually feels though?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so it's going to be a little bit different for every single person because obviously our body reactions are different. A lot of people will start to feel like they can't take a deep breath. So their chest starts to feel heavy. Maybe they have that feeling of like an elephant sitting on it. They might start to want to say something and their voice just like it works, but like it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Where it's like
Mhm.
it's not able to express it confidently and it's not able to say what it really wants to say. It could mean that your shoulders get really tight, your neck hurts, you get headaches, your back hurts. Some people even get like pelvic floor issues because they either like hold their core so tight together and then they like totally release it later on, where we need to have that more of like that subtle contraction all the time.
Mm.
So again, again, the chest is a huge one, voice, neck, back, shoulders, core, breathing, headaches, again, some pelvic floor issues, things like that. Those are the main ways that a lot of women see it.
Okay. And then what about like um sometimes we get a little bit snappy too. And so I feel
Oh yeah,
like
for sure.
some women turn to alcohol, not just to relieve that and like rest their nervous system a little bit or get that relief. But I
Mhm.
feel like sometimes I've heard women say, like, I do it because I'm a better parent because I find that I'm so snappy and
Yeah,
it relaxes me so I can like take in more. So, like, physiologically, like, what's
yeah.
happening in those moments?
Yeah, so we have the physical side of things where again you might get those like constrictions in your chest, breathing, things like that. But then you also have the other side of it too of like the more relational or how like how it's actually showing up. And it could be like the snapping at your children or your husband. It could be that again, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, so this is a really common one where they feel so much urgency that like maybe they didn't hit the right number each month. They didn't bring in enough sales or whatever. And so what happens is that they feel like they have to like throw something together in order to create more sales. Or it could again just be any sort of anything where you look back on it and you're like, what was I doing? Like, why did I do that? Or maybe you're not even looking back on it, but sometimes people they know physically, like they know mentally, they're like, Bridget, stop doing this. Like as they're yelling at their kids or as they're doing something, or as they're sending that email or that text message or whatever.
Mhm.
But they're like, I want to do it anyway. Like I'm so like ragey right now. And it's like, it's almost the best way to think about it is whenever we have two parts of our brains, again, very much simplifying this. We have the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of our brain. And then we have the primitive part of our brain that's like the amygdala, hippocampus, things like that. When you have, when you're in a restful state, your thinking part of your brain is going to be on, meaning that you are going to be able to logically think through something in a relaxed, calm manner. Things are not going to feel urgent. Everything's going to feel like it'll be okay, even if it's like a crazy situation, like everything will be fine. And there's just this feeling of like, it's all going to be okay. And there's that logic to it. Versus if you're in the state of either chronic or acute dysregulation, then it's going to feel like urgency, danger. I have to do this right now. If I don't do this right now, then bad things will happen. And again, you might logically be like, I know bad things are going to happen, but it feels like bad things are going to happen. That's a huge sign that you are in that dysregulated state. And so really it's again, you're able to tell because it's like you get the email, you think like, I probably shouldn't send this to her, even though I'm really frustrated. So let me sit for a minute, type out what I want, maybe erase it, type it again, read through it, and then send it. Versus, and that's like the regulated state. Versus you get the email and you're like, this is terrible. Like, why are you doing this? Blah, 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 whatever it is, sending it, and then immediately being like, why did I just do that? Where's the undo button? Where's the unsend button? feel like that's sort of how it shows up. And I do want to really emphasize it's very normal to go through these as stages. It's not good for us to always be 100% regulated. Just like think of it like your immune system. If your immune system was never challenged, it's never going to grow, right? Or get stronger. Same thing with your nervous system, where if you're always 100% regulated, that means that you're not really pushing yourself and you're not increasing your capacity to hold more. And so the important thing comes when you're able to move from that dysregulated, again, that urgent, that like, ugh feeling, into the regulated pretty easily. So
Mhm.
you might have the email come in and you might immediately get that sense of like, oh, I don't want to answer this, or like, what just happened? But then how quickly are you able to shift into that cognitive thinking of like, okay, everything's okay. If it happens pretty quickly, then that means that you're generally regulated. If it takes a while and you might have regrets after what you do after, that probably means that you're dysregulated. So again, just remember that it's very normal to move through these things. What's important is how quickly you can move out of the dysregulation back into that regulation.
Mhm. Yeah, that's hopeful that to know like you can move in between. And the more you practice it, the
Yeah,
easier it gets, I'm
for
sure.
sure.
And I appreciated that you said too, like the goal is not to be 100%
Yeah.
regulated like all the time. And
Mhm.
that's true with like the work I do too. You have to come against
Yeah,
discomfort
for
to
sure.
grow. Like if we think of anything that we've accomplished or done in our lives that has been meaningful, there's always some level of discomfort
Yeah.
in the beginning, but we are excited for it, or we, are um, know that it's what we are supposed to do. We just kind of push through it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really good to know, because I think sometimes we think, oh, I have to be completely regulated and
Yeah.
peaceful
No.
at all times. And,
Um,
sometimes I've written those emails too, and then I can't get out of my head, so I'll put it in, like, Chat GPT and be like, "Remove the tone," and it's amazing how much better. Yeah.
well, I was actually just sending a Voxer to a client this morning because she's struggling with this. Like, she kind of has the feeling that a lot of women, especially a lot of Catholic women, get, where it's like, if I am not suffering, then that means I'm not holy. And so she's been really struggling with that. And so we've been really working through like, okay, we need you to see that like Jesus wants you to be joyful. Yes, you're going to have to carry your cross, or like he's going to help you carry the cross, but like we're still created to be like the Easter people, like to be happy and to be joyful. And what I was sending her this morning is like, think about children, right? Like we are God's children. And so therefore he says, let the little children come to me. And it's like, so he wants us to come to him as children. And what are children like? And obviously I'm thinking if they're raised in like a healthy environment and they're loved and they have all their provisions and everything. Children are generally very joyful. They're able to express themselves freely. They don't think about how they're going to look if they do this or that. They just are in the present moment and they're very joyful. On the same hand, they can go from like joyful to like crazy in a second, right?
It's true.
And that's normal because that's their own nervous system learning how to regulate.
Mhm.
And then, but what's important is that again, I don't know how to say this, but in like a quote, healthy child, like one that is being raised in that loving environment, they're able to regulate back down into like if they're in that stress state, that activated state, they're able to regulate back down into that joyful, peaceful state pretty quickly usually. So like say you go to the donut shop or whatever and they're like, I want this donut. And you as the mom are like, no, you're not going to get this one. You're going to get this one instead because of whatever. And the child at first might be like, no, I want this one. And you're like, no, you're going to get this one. And they get mad and they're like, whatever. Again, in that healthy relationship, it probably only takes them a little bit to be like, okay, I'm not going to get this donut. I'm going to get this one instead. And for them to logically think through that. And so that's sort of, if you can almost think about it like children as well, where it's like, we're made to grow and to evolve and to go through these difficult situations that stretch us a little bit. But then we're ultimately made to stay in this calm, regulated state. So yeah, just really think about, if you're having trouble understanding it, think about those kids. Are they most of the time like happy, joyful, peaceful? And then whenever they do get kind of crazy, are they able to regulate and come back down pretty quickly?
Hmm. Yeah, I like that. I like thinking of it in that way. And it's so true. So, for my audience, most of them struggle with alcohol, maybe some other things that they use
Mhm.
as comforts. I mean, we all have our things, right? Like,
Yeah, for sure.
I have sugar and scrolling and things like that that I have to kind of battle against too. But when those urges come up, or even that cue for a reward comes up, a lot of times it's not, well, actually, pretty much all the time, it's not actually the alcohol or the thing that
Yeah.
they're looking for. They're looking for the feeling, the emotion, the reward that they'll get after they have it or after we have it.
Yeah.
And they're just looking, I think, most of the time, and you can tell me if this is correct or not. I think really what they're looking for is something to regulate their nervous system a lot of times. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
self-medicating, coping, numbing, but in general, I think it's nervous system regulation that they're looking for. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that all of those are kind of grouped into the regulation. And
Mhm.
I like to think of, I'll just give a personal example. I really like chocolate and like ice cream and stuff like that. And so what I have sometimes, and I had an eating disorder for 5 years. So whenever I was healing from the eating disorder, I really had to figure out like, what is the root of what's going on with this? Why do I want to not eat anything and then like eat a bunch and then like not eat anything and then work out a bunch and like do all these different crazy things? And ultimately, and you know this listening to this, like it's ultimately about control, right? But what is control actually trying to give you? Like what is having control of something give you that feeling of safety, right?
Yeah.
And so if you are not feeling safe in your environment, in your situation, yeah, you're going to grab something that makes you feel like you have control of something, whether it be your phone, whether it be food, whether it be alcohol, whatever. Even if it's yelling at your kids, like that's a way to try to control things. And so we really have to, instead of thinking of these things as like bad, because again, God made everything inherently good. So nothing is bad necessarily. It's how we use it. So like the chocolate and the ice cream aren't bad necessarily. But what is it if I'm over consuming it or if I'm using it to kind of numb things? It's because I might be feeling a lack of safety. Now, again, that lack of safety doesn't mean that I'm out in the wilderness and animals are all around me. It could mean that I had a really stressful day. My body is fried. I never gave my brain a break and I'm feeling super overwhelmed. So therefore, my body feels very unsafe. And so when in that moment, I want to reach for the chocolate or the ice cream or whatever, or maybe alcohol. And in that case, that's when you really want to go in and be like, my body's actually desiring safety. And this is where that cognitive brain clicks in. My body's actually desiring safety. How can I make it feel safe right now in this moment? And that could be something like talking to your husband or spouse. That could be like going for a walk. That could be laying outside in the grass looking up at the sky, taking a bath, reading a book, doing something that is actually going to regulate you. And those most regulatory activities are going to be those things of walking, movement, nutrition, connection, relationships, things like that. Those are going to be what are actually regulating, not this alcohol or food or scrolling or whatever that we actually think is regulating. And just really quick too with that, one of the big things that I teach is not just the regulatory tools, because you can find those online. Like, again, you can use AI now to just say, like, how can I regulate myself?
Right.
Then the regulation is super, super important. It really is. But if you're not getting to the core root of why you are getting dysregulated, then it's just kind of a band-aid approach. And so what I really do is we get into the root of why you're dysregulated. And we do this, I use the wounds of Jesus and like really go through these different things and help them to see like maybe that powerlessness or that abandonment that they're feeling and that they're trying to patch up by drinking or whatever is actually rooted in something that happened when they were 5 or 6 years old and is now just showing up. And when you can heal that 5 or 6 year old memory and like show that break that nervous system pattern essentially, then it's no longer going to have any hold over you, even now as an adult. So I think that's really important to remember as well.
Yeah, that it is very important. So many times I'll say, Like, you don't need alcohol, but you do need something. You're
Yeah.
definitely needing something. So what I tell people is to ask the questions like, what am I feeling and what do I need right now? And I love that you brought up that a lot of times it's our desire to control
Oof.
and that we're seeking safety. I hadn't heard of that before, but I mean, that's really what it is, right?
Mhm.
We are seeking that. And so, yeah, they need something, but and in that moment, it feels like taking a swig out of a wine bottle is
Yeah,
like
it's gonna give them that.
the only moment that they have for themselves during the
Yeah.
day. Or it's the thing that's gonna like help regulate them for a minute, before they
Mhm.
move on to the next thing, to cooking dinner,
Yeah, for
to
sure.
helping manage emotions and things like that. So I think all of that is so good and important to think about and to realize, because I find that the more information that my clients and women in general have, people in general have, the easier it is to say, like you were saying, just kind of stop and be like, okay, what's really going on here?
Yeah, for sure.
Because when we just react, then we react and then we feel bad and then
Yeah.
we have shame and then, it's just like this vicious cycle. How does alcohol react with the nervous system?
Oh, yes. Okay. Can I answer or can I give really quick example of what
Absolutely.
I was just saying before I touch on the alcohol piece there? And so really quickly, let me just give you an example of how these wounds that we have from our childhood show up in our adult life. Okay. So one day, this was a few months ago, my daughter asked for an apple. Now she's 9 years old. She knows how to use a knife, but like obviously I don't really love her using a knife because I don't want her to chop her fingers off or somebody else's fingers off. And so I was putting laundry into the dryer and I was like, okay, give me 1 second. I'll get you that apple. I promise. Just give me a second. And in the meantime, she went and she got the apple. She got the knife. She got the cutting board. She cut the apple. She put it out in bowls and everything like that for her brothers. And I come out of doing laundry and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I was literally gone for 45 seconds. Like, how did you do this that quickly? Could you not have waited for these? And I got to the point where I was getting really irritated. And again, I wasn't saying anything or doing anything because I've done this work now. So I kind of know the process of like how your body works with it. And what I said to myself is I was like, what is this wound that is coming up for me right now?
Mm.
And what I noticed is that I was coming up, and again, this is specific where I teach there's the different wounds of Jesus and like how to bring them up and heal them. And so the wound that was really affecting me in that moment was this rejection that I was feeling because it was like, she doesn't need me anymore. Like,
Mm.
so therefore I'm feeling rejected. And in that moment, it could have gone two ways, one of two ways. I could have snapped at her and been like, why did you get the knife? Why didn't you just wait for me? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Like, why? But then what would that have done? It would have led to guilt on my part later on. It would have made her feel like, oh, I can't do this. Like, I'm not good enough to be able to do this. I'm not responsible, things like that. Or I could go down the other road of saying something like, wow, you did like such a great job. Like, I'm really proud of you. Like, maybe next time just wait for me so I can maybe help you or get you the bowls or something. And so, because again, the work that I've done, I chose that second road where it was like I affirmed what she did and then put a little gentle correction in there, but really affirmed it. And then what happened from then on is one, she waited for me whenever she wanted an apple. But then two, the smile that she had whenever I said, like, wow, you did a really great job. You're so responsible was like, like, it was like priceless. And so that's just a really quick example of like how healing these nervous system wounds that you have, I call it nervous system repair, can change everything because it's just a pattern interrupt that we have to do. So
Mm.
again, I just wanted to throw that out there to give you kind of a tangible example of how this works.
Mhm.
But as far as you mentioned alcohol and the nervous system, right? I think.
Mhm.
Okay. So again, kind of go back to depending on how many science classes you took, going back to let's look at like the central nervous system. Again, that's the brain, spinal cord. Alcohol is a depressant. Most people know that. What happens, again, I'm not going to get too much into the nitty gritty of it. But essentially, alcohol influences the nervous system through two different mechanisms, one of which is through an inhibitory neurotransmitter, which essentially just slows down neural activity, and it produces that calming sedative effect. That's the part that everybody likes because it feels good pretty quickly, right?
Mhm.
And then we also have this other piece, which makes it even kind of more confusing for our bodies because, again, it's that depressant. And then we also have this piece where the alcohol inhibits, I think it's glutamate. I think that's what it is. Not that it matters for listeners necessarily. And that further suppresses brain activity and communication. Okay.
Mm.
So in low doses over time, I mean, is it going to make a huge, huge difference? I mean, it depends. Low doses are going to lead to like the slow reactive time, lower inhibition, impaired judgment, things that we know alcohol does. From a nervous system perspective, that prefrontal cortex, again, that one, the logical part, the responsible for decision making, is going to be very vulnerable in that time because the prefrontal cortex deals with judgment, impulse control, planning, everything like that. Now, as we go more and more into drinking, things are going to get even more slurred. And I mean that many ways, where you're going to have different parts of your brain being affected as well. So the blackouts that come are the hippocampus literally not forming a memory. And that is a nervous system response because, just to back up a second, whenever you do not have a memory of something, that is because your body, your nervous system, has deemed that it's not necessary for us to put that in, to encode that as a memory. There's more important things going on, like staying alive, than to encode a memory. And so by drinking, it again affects that memory formation because our bodies deem that memory formation is not a priority right now. And then obviously we know about how it affects coordination and things like that. And then as far as the brainstem, which is again is part of your central nervous system, that's going to control your heart rate and your breathing. And so again, low doses, it's not going to necessarily do too much, but as you get higher doses of it, that's going to affect breathing, heart rate, which then obviously affects everything else. Then we have the different peripheral nervous system issues as well, where this can literally lead to like neuropathy, which is essentially like it kills the nerves in your hands, your toes, your legs, things like that. And so there's many different diseases and syndromes and things like that. But I mean, it affects everything that we put into our body, affects our nervous system. And alcohol, again, because of its depressive properties, really affects it because it just slows everything down so much.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. And I never knew really why blackouts happen. So
Yeah.
I'm happy that you explained that and it usually happens when we've had way, way, way too I mean, I used to experience blackouts, and really when you experience blackouts, that's generally a sign that alcohol is like a problem for you
Yeah.
in a big way. But just realizing like what that means. Like it means that
Yeah.
your body is trying to stay alive worse than it is trying to
Yeah.
remember a memory. And then that should, I mean, if I had known that back then, I don't know if it would have changed my mind or not, but I feel like knowing that would be like, oh my gosh, my body was like trying to protect me and keep me alive. And I just kept drinking, drinking.
I don't know if you've heard this from people too, where they're like, I can't remember big parts of my childhood. Like, they just don't remember. Like, they know that things happened, but they don't remember it. And that's the nervous system response as well, because again, their body perceived as a child even that it's more important to stay alive and to stay safe than it is to encode memories to your brain.
Right.
And so that's why, or whenever there's a trauma or anything like that, that's why a lot of times those people have no memory of it.
Mm.
Now, sometimes it can go the opposite direction and you can like really encode like a really like intense memory, but more often it's that it's just gone and you don't remember it because your brain thought that it wasn't important to take the time and the energy and the resources because the brain takes up a lot of energy.
Mhm.
And if it's not going to allocate that energy towards memory production and imprinting, if there's a bear to be chased or to be run away from, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and I am glad that you went back and told that story about your daughter too, because inner healing is a big part of the work that I do with clients too, and we talk a lot about it because so many times we're trying to fill a wound or heal a
Yeah, for sure.
wound with alcohol or other things because like you were saying, safety, right? We're
Yeah.
looking for safety. And so, it all comes down to all of those different aspects of inner healing. So I'm glad that you mentioned that because it's all connected. It's just
It is.
all connected, mind, body, and soul. But one thing that I think might be helpful, for you to talk about is, like and what I hear so often is like, "Well, I've removed alcohol, but I just am so anxious, so on edge, like, all these other things are coming up for me, and I don't really know how to manage it without alcohol." And, it's because that's been the thing for so long.
Yeah.
You feel a certain way, you feel like your body's response, and then you just know, like, "I'll have alcohol, and then that will help." So what is happening here for her, and then what does she actually need? You've kind of talked about it before, but
Yeah.
I think it'd be good just to revisit that.
Yeah. I mean, one big thing to remember too is like alcohol literally is going to, so we have these things in our body called neurotransmitters. And if you've had a baby, you probably have heard about like oxytocin and pitocin and things like that. But the neurotransmitters are essentially they are going to take the message from your external environment and your nervous system, and they're going to transport them to the brain, which then the brain decides what to do with those things, with those messages. It works super well most of the time. But whenever you drink alcohol or even different kinds of foods or medications or anything like that, some of them, not all of them, some of them will actually take the place of your body's neurotransmitters. And so they send a similar signal, but not the exact signal that we need. Right. And so, like, again, because I'm kind of a birth nerd, let's just stick with oxytocin and pitocin, for example. Oxytocin is the body's natural form of like that love hormone, that bonding hormone that is released during birth. That's what allows women to feel really connected to their babies and or with their husbands or whatever. Pitocin is similar, but it's a synthetic form. And so there's a couple of different things on it that are just slightly different. And the body is so smart. Like God created us so it's amazing. And it can tell the difference between the synthetic oxytocin and the natural form of oxytocin, synthetic pitocin, sorry. And it sends a similar signal, but again, very different in terms of the end result. So that's why if women listening and you were augmented with pitocin, you might have been like, that was the worst labor in my entire life. The pain was horrible. It never stopped. Like, versus if you weren't augmented with pitocin, your body went through this normal process of like large contraction and then a break and then a large contraction and a break because our body has this wisdom in the oxytocin that says like, okay, we're really going to give it all. And then we're going to take a rest. And we're really going to give it all and take a rest. And so just remember, like whenever you're drinking alcohol or again, taking drugs or using certain types of foods or whatever, that some of those things are literally taking the place of the natural neurotransmitters, which that's going to affect things like your anxiety, your stress levels, migraines, sleep, all of these different things. And so the other important thing to remember too is our gut is so, so important for our brain to work properly. And so alcohol is really hard on your digestive system, really hard. And so are other foods and things like that too. And if you're in the state of chronic stress, that compounds the effects that alcohol is going to have on your gut, which then makes things worse on your brain, right? And so it's this huge circle that's very complicated, but essentially what you really want to do is you need to figure out first, like you were mentioning what you do with your clients, like understand what alcohol was managing. So were you using it for that social connection, to sleep, because you're bored, because you want to kind of check out for the day or you have really bad anxiety? Like if once you can identify that, then you can start to go into like, okay, what's something that I can do to replace this? So you could do things like deep breathing, exercise, different prayer, like therapy, journaling, whatever it is that you want to do. Maybe even some diet changes, magnesium, melatonin, things like that. And then from there, just really recognizing that, like, whatever alcohol is doing, whether it's calming the nerves, making the social fear kind of go away, there is a healthier tool that targets the exact same need. You just have to identify your reason and then find the right strategy to that. And again, I always do like the and heal the root of why your body feels the need to even have that reason in the first place. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. It does. So, because you're a Christian nervous system coach, I was just wondering, what would you say to a woman who like feels like her inability or her dysregulation not only keeps her from God, but maybe
Yeah.
even it somehow like a lack of faith. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
for
Because
sure.
we can be so hard on ourselves. And so it's like, oh, if I just prayed harder or I just did this more, like, what's wrong with me? Like, what would you say to her?
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge thing. And so I talk about this a lot in my content because it is so huge. Obviously, God's this is our the main thing in our it should be the main thing in our lives. And so right now, if you're feeling like you pray all the time, you desire to be so holy, but you're just feeling like kind of all alone or abandoned or like what's the point of doing all of this? That is also a nervous system response because if you're always feeling like you pray but God's not really listening to you, like he's not saying anything, he's not there, or at least, like, again, logically, you might know that he's there, but, like, you don't feel like he's there with you. And again, it's a nervous system response because your brain feels so overwhelmed and so, um, like, it always has to be striving and doing all the things that it doesn't feel safe enough to even, like, put down that guard and to surrender and say, like and actually mean, like, "I can't do all of this, like, you need to take care of this." And not to say that it's ever gonna be I mean, some of us might be graced with, um those, like, beautiful saint stories that we hear about where, like, we see Mama Mary come and, like, there's angels all around, like, that'd be amazing. And some of us might be called to live more like Mother Teresa, where she had that really kind of desolate, dry I forget the exact word she used, but that dry prayer life. But she knew that God was always there. So it's kind of a complex issue because we don't know what God is calling us to, whether we just are having that nervous system response and it's like we just need to kind of push through it, or have we healed the nervous system response, but we're being called like Mother Teresa to really have that, like, the well's gonna be dry, and you just are gonna have to be the one to, like, stand guard for it. And so the only way that you can really know that is by doing the nervous system repair and then the continuation of the regulation so that you can really be like, I'm sure that I'm giving everything to him. And if he is choosing not to truly reveal himself to me, then I have to trust that that's for a purpose.
Mm,
And when you can trust, because truthfully, I have been in the space of like kind of dryness for like 10 years.
mm,
Actually, more than that, probably like 15 years. Now, I go to daily mass multiple times a week. We receive sacraments a lot, like do all the quote right things, pray every day, rosary, journal, like all the things. And again, it's a very, very dry time.
mm,
And I know that some days it is that nervous system response, but other days I know it's not because I've done this work where it's like, no, like I know that God's there and like I can feel the joy in the presence, but it just is like, this is what he's called me to, is this dryness. Because one time I experienced where it wasn't dry and I was like, this is amazing. Like, can it be like this every day?
yeah,
And so I think it's just a matter of, again, like, you need to really heal whatever these stories you're telling yourself and whatever you learned as a child. And then from there, you'll be able to actually know, is this a dry time in my spiritual life? Or have I been blocking God out? Because God's always there. He always is ready for us to, he's never out of sight. or out of reach. We are always the ones keeping him out. So yeah, once you figure out that nervous system response, it's like, I can feel that he's there, but I just can't quite touch him yet. And like, that's how some people are. Whereas other people, again, have that really zealous, like beautiful, like on fire. So it just kind of depends on the person.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's gonna be so encouraging for women because I hear that, like I
Yeah.
feel like I'm going through a desert right now, or I feel like I just don't feel God,
Yeah.
close to me right now. But like you said, just knowing He's always with you and He's always there, and just invite Him in and keep inviting Him in and know that He's there is so beautiful. And just like your testimony of knowing that he's there and seeing it, through the work that you've been doing, but just even you just saying like he's just like not, it seems quite a little bit
It's,
out of reach.
yeah. Yeah.
And I know that so many women listening can relate to that. So I appreciate you sharing that with the audience. So, one last question before we close is, for the woman, and you're a busy mom, so I know you can answer this because you're a mom, multiple business owner, and all those things. But for the woman who says, like, I have 5 kids, I have zero time to try to
Yeah.
regulate my nervous system, to try, because alcohol is a very quick
Yeah,
fix,
for sure.
and that's why. But what does realistic nervous system care look like for a woman like that?
Yes. So it is really hard. I'm not going to lie and say that it's easy because it is really, really hard. And so just to give you a baseline of like what most people need in order to be in that safe, regulated state, most people need, and I have like a set 5 or like couple that I have my clients do every day. Nourishing foods, whatever that means for you. Hydrating, so drinking a lot of water.
Yeah.
Prayer every day. Movement every day. And then joy every single day. And that's going to look different for everybody. But like you have to be able to laugh, dance, do all the things like that. And that's for some people, that's a learned behavior, especially if you have more of that melancholic behavior. To be joyful, like it's hard for some people. And so those are kind of the 5 things that every single day you should be doing in some capacity. It doesn't mean that you have to go and like go to the gym for an hour and a half or like hire a chef to have these beautiful meals. That'd be amazing. But let's don't have it.
Yes, please.
And so, but those are like the basics that your body needs. Your body just needs those things. Okay. And so how do you do it all every day? Well, first off, and this might sound a little bit harsh, we have to stop making the excuse of like, I don't have time, because you do have time. Right. And again, I say that with all the love in the world because there are many days where I'm like, I don't want to work out today. I don't have time. It's like, I do have time. I'm just not prioritizing it. I'm not making it the priority that it should be. And so again, really prioritizing like these 5 things. And if it's really hard for you to figure out or to make yourself do these 5 things, I always say like, and if you have children, you don't have to do these 5 things for yourself, but you have to do these 5 things for your kids. Because one, if you don't do these 5 things every day, you're probably going to show up in a not nice way. You're not going to be the mom that you want to be. And that's going to lead to relationship issues with your husband, with your kids, with maybe your job or business or family members, whatever. And then also, you're teaching your kids with everything that you do. So are you teaching them that you think it's important to value your physical body that God has given you, that you think it's valuable to nourish that body, to grow its mind, to grow in spirit? Like, what are you teaching them? So there's many days where I'm like, I really don't want to pray the rosary right now. I'd rather just sit and play on my phone or watch a show or something really bad. And I always have to go back to like, but if I do that, then they're going to see that and they're going to think, oh, even on the hard days, I don't have to do what like we know we need to do. And so that's my big way of doing it, is again, not doing it for myself necessarily when it's hard, but doing it for them. And then that really helps me out. And again, just keep reminding yourself, like, you are worthy of these things, not because you've done anything or because of who you are, just because of whose you are. Like, you are God's beloved child, and He has given us this life, this body to be taken care of. Our bodies are a temple, and so therefore we have to take care of them. And so, yeah, it's a non-negotiable. And it really is just getting out of your mind of like, I don't have time, and saying, what am I making time for that isn't this? And how can we adjust that?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's so helpful. Thank you. Yeah, I always say, like, make it a priority and then protect it at all costs. Like,
Yeah.
what do I need to do to protect that? Um,
Yeah. And I think one other thing with that too is having realistic expectations.
yeah.
So again, I have a lot of kids. We live on a farm, have a bunch of stuff going on. So I used to get to the gym every day. Now I get to do like a 15-minute stretch workout every day
Hmm.
while we pray the rosary and our kids are running around kind of like crazy. And guess what? I still get to move my body. I still feel better afterwards. I'm still getting stronger, or at least not getting weaker. And so just like releasing some of those expectations that you might have for yourself, not lowering the bar, but just adjusting like what they look like.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. Yeah, because sometimes I fall into the trap of like wanting to do all the things and do them perfectly, like all
Well,
at once. And then
yeah,
it's discouraging because it's like, wait,
it is
now I'm
for
just
sure.
going to give up because I can't do any of them.
Yeah. And that's a
Some
whole
is
nother,
better than none, is what I always say.
yes. And that's a whole nother topic we could touch
It
on too.
is. I know.
Habits versus identity and like all that stuff.
I know. That is a whole nother podcast episode. But I need to be aware of your time. And I just want to thank you so much for being here. So, Brigid, where can women find you, or learn more about working with you? If there's anything that you want to like tell my audience about that you have that might benefit them, that would be great too.
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me at lorettowellness.com. That's just LORETO wellness.com. I'm also on Instagram, just at Brigid.Tebaldi. And I actually just released a new freebie. It's an audio training that I would love if anybody wants to download it. It's all about spiritual somatic rewiring. So kind of what we talked about. And this one is specifically around like money, because a lot of us, again, Catholic Christians, have issues around, can we be holy and still be wealthy? Or not
Mhm.
even wealthy, but like, and still have money.
Mhm.
And so, because at least for me, for a while, I always thought like St. Francis of Assisi like was poor. So that's how we all have to be, barefoot and like in rags, right? And so, yeah, so I'd love if you went and downloaded that. It's all about what God calls us to, healing these deeper wounds that we have. And you can find that on my website, or you can DM me on Instagram, and I would love to send that to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Brigid. And I will go ahead and have those links in the show notes as well for you. So,
Awesome.
for being here.
Thank you so much.
Well, that does it for this episode of the Catholic Sobriety Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I would invite you to share it with a friend who might also get value from it as well. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a thing. I am the Catholic Sobriety Coach, and if you would like to learn how to work with me or learn more about the coaching that I offer, visit my website, thecatholicsobrietycoach.com. Follow me on Instagram at the Catholic Sobriety Coach. I look forward to speaking to you next time. And remember, I am here for you. I am praying for you. You are not alone.